So please welcome Ulrika Sullivan to the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley.
You're so welcome. I'm so happy. I was telling you before we hit record, we had our galactic astrology session and I put it on my YouTube channel, and all these people are coming to me saying, oh my gosh, that was so fascinating. And I can't wait to get one. So get ready. Second of all, my life since last week, which it's only been a few, like 3 days, um, has been so different. And it's been, I've had psychic readings and past life regressions, and I had a psychic reading the same week I had your reading. So it was kind of neat I didn't tell you that because we were so focused on this astrology reading from you, but it was a pre-recording to an interview that I'm going to have in a couple weeks, like I did yours. And there was parallels to what she said and what you said. So I thought that was so fascinating and kind of neat that it was on the same week. So it was kind of fresh in my mind. But I want to explain to people how you came to me and what happened. So um, Ulrika came to me through like a matchmaker, right? And I look through that, and if it's something draws me, and yours did, it was like galactic astrology, your book, Wisdom Beyond What You Know, the words that I saw within you that I thought, oh, it sparked an interest. So we responded, got a date, and then I prepared before, and I wasn't feeling it. I didn't know anything about galactic astrology, and I couldn't do it. I sat here at this desk and I was telling you that it wasn't coming. I needed to have that experience of a galactic astrology reading. And that is what we did. So we met. I said, I'm going to sign up. So she takes my birth date, goes to town and works hours and hours to come up with this amazing 2-hour reading. And when I realized during the time of our reading afterwards, especially, how important that was and why it wasn't feeling right to just sit with you and maybe talk about your book and what you do and your life story. There's so much to this. And I think it's kind of like at the leading edge. I think people are so interested in aliens and the galactic system, and they're wondering where they come from. I mean, it's just opening a whole new can of worms, right? But what I've learned about you, even since we had our reading, is I wanted you to start with your story, because you have children. You have 3 girls. I have 2 girls, and I didn't know that until yesterday when I was really doing my deep dive. And I thought, so she's a mom, but she started in the pharmaceutical business, of all things, of all things in the world. This woman whose soul is completely on the other end of the spectrum now started there in Sweden, right? You were born in Sweden.
That's right. Yes.
So
Mhm.
will you take us to this? So let me tell you why this is so important, because of what I'm doing now. And your children are how old?
They're all in high school.
Okay, me too. 2 girls in high school, ninth and 12th grade. So you're in my same boat. And so I want to talk about that as well, because I coach the teenagers because I see it so important. But when I see your life and my life and how I relate to, when I get to know you during this time before we meet, I say, oh, I just relate to her life. It's such a parallel. And then look at us now. I mean, I'm 54. I don't know how old you are, but I had my kids later in life, and now I'm discovering really why I'm here. The beginning of my life, oh my goodness, that was like, I was not in the pharmaceutical industry, but I might as well have been. So, but that's what I'm saying, and why I'm bringing up the girls is, when you raise children with our mindset and what we know as this evolved soul that we've become at this stage of our life and still going. I have this page in 12th grade talking about college, not really knowing what she wants to do, but it's like let's open up different ideas. Let's go deep. I didn't have anyone to do that with. I just, it's like you just go, okay, I check the box, go to college, check the box, get a job, check the box, find a boyfriend, check the box, get married, check the box, have 2, 3 kids, and then go to work every day and be miserable and just keep going. But you come across with this story of that. That's what kind of ignited that. So take it away and tell my audience that will just love your story and how you got to this place right now in your life today.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. First of all, it's an honor to be on your podcast. And I'm so happy the podcast matchmaker put us together. I truly believe that was not a coincidence.
No. Oh,
So,
for sure.
so a little bit about me. Well, I think you described it in your journey is very similar to mine in the sense that I started out in corporate America, moved with work from Sweden to United States in 2001, and really found myself in the corporate job, young family, multitasking, and a very busy life. And I found myself very disconnected from my true self, and I didn't know it at the time, but that really is what it was. And I really deep down felt that there's got to have to be more than this. I was very successful, very, I loved my job. I'm very much at the time, I was very identified myself with my work and my career. That was my self identity. And now, quite a few years ago now, I hit rock bottom. And I know now that was the universe orchestrating that. But at the time, it was devastating because I lost my self-identity. I was released from my work due to a reorganization. And, I found myself with a choice. And that was the universal part of it, that I had a choice. Do I want to discover more of myself, or do I want to go another cycle, discovering the same thing and still being unfulfilled? So I feel that my journey is very, very similar to yours in the sense of not really being 100% fulfilled. Love what we do, but it's like, yeah, there's got to have to be more. And what I realized also along the way is that I want to, serve in a deeper way. I couldn't go as deep as I wanted to. My soul really wanted to go deep with people, having those conversations. And I couldn't do that in my previous career.
Right. Oh gosh, that just hit a light bulb. I've lived my life until I had our session. I've never really connected with like groups, or I'd have mom groups, but I couldn't really be myself and do like why I love the podcast so much and meeting people like you is that you can get into these conversations and it's it's equal, and we're both kind of on like where you're searching and I'm searching, and it's so fun to see what we've discovered. But it was just a shallow life, and when I look back at the time, all in fun, but I realize now after understanding myself more from last week with you, I never really had that. I couldn't be like you just said, like be my full, authentic, deep. I mean, I would probably drive my sisters crazy. And then I'm like, but my close friends. But, I think when I have that knowing now of more of my true soul essence, it makes so much more sense. And it doesn't make me feel like, gosh, I've always kind of been an outcast, but I know why, right?
Yes, yes, and that's the same feeling I have, that this is opening us up to accept that uniqueness about us, and everyone is unique in its own sense, but it's that connection internally with it that we have the opportunity to kind of get, and that's really where the fulfillment and inner peace comes from, that
Right.
recognition within ourselves of who we truly are. And I love that you had that insight.
But when you have this company lay you off, you're waking up in the morning, you don't have a job, or you're like, I'm going to go to the bookstore and start reading. Like, where do you go?
Yeah, thinking back to the time many years ago now, I still went into my home office. I had an office downtown, and I had a office at home, and I still to this day remember the days after I got released from my job, because I really could not sense myself. So I went back in my office like I usually do, and I was just sitting there on my chair at my desk. And it was this empty feeling of not knowing who I truly am. But that also ignited something in me. My soul was kind of telling me, okay, Ulrika, it's time for you to really connect with who you truly are now. And so, for me, it was, I gave myself the opportunity, because I was, things just happens. And we know now that we're presented with signs and synchronicities, and it's our choice if we want to take that opportunity or not.
Right.
And I did. And I went back, to connect with, had a yoga practice for many years that I connected even more with that. I told myself, I have to go back and take yoga classes. And long and behold, I became a yoga teacher, and I got invited to be, part of the teacher program. And at that time I was so open that I just like, oh, sure. But deep down I said, I don't know if I want to be a teacher. And, maybe I'll just go there for my own practice and see what happens. Right. But I realize now that I gave myself that space to explore. And I'm glad I did. Because often, I have this career, I need to find a similar job and right back on track in my career and so on. But this time it felt really different, and I just gave myself the opportunity to listen.
Right.
To
But
myself.
how many people do that really? How many people just think, I mean, I know even reading your website and realizing who you help are people that just get into this, like their blinders are on, they believe that this is how it should be. They have to work so hard that, I think of being a mom and, with the kids and trying to be the best mom and, have this family and, provide this motherly, love and, a being there for them. There's so much pressure, but people get so into this like tunnel, and they don't realize and stop like you did and say, wait a second, there has to be something more for me. This is not, I'm just on this like hamster wheel, I always call, but it's so true. It's like when you finally put that stick in the hamster wheel and say, okay, I've had enough. And then the world, that's when the synchronicities come. That's when the magic happens. That's when it's like, oh, that's how to live. That's what life is about. But how many people will put that stick in there?
Right. But what I do know now, when I, look at charts, what my situation and the rock bottom that I was in, it was visible in my astrology chart at the time.
Oh,
So, I've learned also that these major changes don't have to be, traumatic, because with energy tools like astrology, we can actually, identify these really critical points in our lives where we can expect an energy shift, because that's really what it is. It's an energy shift that we either, choose to follow, or we kind of go back and continue to struggle against that energy that is, and it's a natural progress. And we know that, around certain age, we have these energy shifts in our lives. Right. And yeah, but I didn't know that at the time, right? I was just like, what's happening to me? But the insights now, they are available if we are kind of asking ourselves, who am I, and what can I learn about my energy? And
right.
So that's pretty cool.
Very cool. So you were a yoga instructor, you did life coach training, Reiki, all the trainings, you just started going all in.
Yeah.
As you're raising your babies? Are you raising your babies at this point?
Yeah. So yes, they were, elementary school, beginning of middle school at the time. maybe even, yeah, I would say elementary school. It's hard to remember now because it's like life feels so different. But um, it was really signs and synchronicities that was coming in, opportunities. And so I was picking these modalities, yeah, energy healing, expanded my yoga um, and coaching, and all of them actually came to me through synchronicity. And that's pretty amazing to the universe is giving us these signs. And in the past I had just ignored the signs, right?
Right.
I was like too too focused. But now I really, I mean, I didn't know at the time what path I would go down in terms of my transformation, but I chose to follow what was presented to me and what felt right. So it was a completely different way of interpreting information, than I've ever experienced before. So that's really what happened. And yes, it was a busy life, but I decided also that, or maybe it was just synchronicity that happened, that I wanted to make more time for myself. So I started to go back to meditation, which I actually had been practicing since, teenage years, but been
Oh,
away from way back. And I just like, okay, I naturally wanted to go back. Okay, maybe I'll just, meditate a little bit every day. And with that, it opened up this space within myself, but also in my calendar to yeah. And it's amazing when thinking back, like, how could I make this change? But in a way, it was just happening.
you know what comes to my mind is, I know we always talk about vibration and, frequencies, and I want to talk about that because that was brought up in your reading. But when I look at when my life started opening up and the magic started happening and the synchronicities were just like coming at me, and all the signs were, like right in front of my face, was when my vibration, and I was so happy and excited for what was coming. And I wasn't in that tunnel, and I had opened up my eyes and had the gratitude and did the meditation and the, learning and reading and going to classes and, really opening my heart and my soul to knowing that there's so much more. But that's when, and I think, don't you feel like your vibration shifted? And then it was like, oh, this, the Reiki person comes, the life coach comes, the yoga, right? Because it's all there. I say that to the girls all the time. It's like, whatever you want, you've got to have that clarity, but you also have the, that your joy, gratitude, that whole energy shift. And then you're like a magnet to all that.
Yes. Yes. And the difference there is, imagine you have this goal of watching somebody else being the life coach or being the energy healer, and watching them, and I want what they have, versus realizing for yourself that that is for me.
Right.
That's the difference. That's the alignment, the energetic kind of match that can happen. And that's when the inner alignment happens. So it's a very different way to go at the same thing. But that's what happened for me, that I felt, and you have felt too, what you do now is very much aligned energetically to who you truly are. And that's when the key gets in the lock.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Oh gosh. So let's start with a galactic reading, just a little overview of the things that I wanted to pull out and ask you about. And then we'll talk about the things you do in your book. But let's kind of do our little limelight, the spotlight right now on this, because I'm still on a high from our reading. And I, when you first started, it was kind of like you knew me. We get on Zoom and you could see me. Like I just go, oh my gosh, she knows everything about me. Right? I mean, you get everything. It's so deep.
Yes, that's the way I do it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, so explain that. So you get my birth date, you put it together. You don't have to go in all in it, but you get it together and you start to really kind of understand layers upon layers of my soul's journey.
Yes. Yes. And I have a number of tools to my disposal. Of course, I have your birth information, which is your unique energetic imprint. And I use, traditional astrology, tropical Western astrology. So I look at your birth chart, but I also run the galactic chart, which is kind of I call it the outer ring of information that actually gives me information about your multidimensional self. I also look at other energy systems like human design or the gene keys, but all of this is giving me a multi-pronged kind of information base, and it's out there for everyone can gain access to this information. But where the depth comes in is when I do the intuitive work, because I spend a number of hours analyzing kind of the tools, right, and what I see in the charts. But then comes the intuitive bit that is giving me themes or specific information. I use also dowsing, a pendulum to really confirm specific pieces of information. But and that's really a dance with your energy and connection with your guides, and my guides are working together to pull out the specific themes that are relevant for you now in this life here and now. And that's where the dance comes in intuitively. So that's what really is fascinating here. It's I think it really works for me, being as originally a scientist. I love the charts, the analytic part of it, but then to be able to use my intuitive gifts as well is really where the depths come in, and that's what I love.
But how did you tune into your intuitive gifts coming from the science world?
It's been a journey, but it's also, everyone has intuitive gifts. It's about, for me, my personal experience was to actually increase my trust in what I receive.
Right.
And that's really where I now can be very spot on, because I trust what comes through, and it's not a flip of a switch, right? It's over a number of years I've honed this skill, and I know how I receive information. Some people receive images, right? Some people do the auditory input, and some people, like me, I just know. It's a body sensation, inner knowing, if you will.
Yeah, that's mine too. It's all knowing.
Yeah.
It's all knowing. And I realize now, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when I'm listening to you, people would always say, gosh, Ashley, you can make decisions so quickly. Like if I was going to buy a couch or pick wallpaper or do, paint, it would just be like, that's it. That's it. And they'd spend months in the stores, at every store in the planet looking. And I don't need to do that. I just know.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's why?
Because
I
you
never
also
thought of it that way.
Yeah, and you have a sacral inner authority, which means if I look at your human design, I can tell that you have a very, like, your gut feeling is where you get your inner knowing from, and that's often a strong inner, a feeling of, I know this, I know what's right for me, right? And all of us have different ways of like, I have what we call an emotional inner authority. So I need to come down from an emotional high or low to a neutral before I really can make a decision. But I think my point here is we can learn, this information is out there about us
Right.
in our charts of how we can hone our intuitive abilities, and they are different for everyone. So yeah, I'm not surprised you can, you just know, because it's part of what we call our inner authority.
Right. So let's go to when you talk about, you said I came from the angelic realm, and everyone's coming from some different realm, right? Where do you come from?
So I actually come well, here's the thing. I also come from the angelic realm.
Oh, okay.
We have a similar, the reason is we already know who is going to come to us, right? Really, like it's already predetermined at our soul contract level. Like the clients that I'm going to help, or the souls that I'm going to help in my life, already knows that they will be coming to me, and vice versa for you, right? So it's very comforting to know that, because I can see through the stream of clients that come to me are quite similar in a sense, but it's a variety, of course, but there are some commonalities. So I love that, because it's soul contracts at play here.
Right. And I was listening to something you said in an interview, that anyone in your life is all there's billions of people on this planet. And the fact that I'm sitting here with you, there's a connection.
Yeah. And like, what's the likelihood, right? It's
right.
It's all about probability. And that's why I really, whatever comes through is meant to come through, because what's the likelihood, right? What's the chance that just that is coming through? It's like, of all these this vast probability. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating, isn't it?
Yes. I think my questions have evolved since my last interview before I had this, because now I understand more when I'm asking the questions. But, I always asking about, we in our higher self, and that we're a fractal of that energy. And we talked
Of the
about
group consciousness.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're just this little tiny little fractal, or whatever you want to call it, inhabiting this body to live in this it's all happening at once. We came here. I mean, the way you described it, I almost feel like I have so much more clarity of really why I'm here. That's really what it did for me for those 2 hours. And it's like this, I'm more relaxed in life, and it's like I went on my walk this morning, the last few days, and it's, I'm just going, oh my gosh, this is just like, there's nothing, not that I'm not a person that worries, or, if anything, I worry more about the girls than anything, but if I have to use that word, but I just trust, like your picture behind you. I love the word trust. It's trust and surrender are my 2 favorite words. But explain kind of like, how you feel like this, your soul, and that whole system, and what you've discovered, and what you feel like your how you came into this body that you call.
Yeah. Yeah. And first, it's that soul validation, I call it, that happens in a reading, because your soul already knows all of these things. And it's for your human self, if you will, the mind and the heart to connect. And that's the power of these readings sometimes, that connection is happening. Your soul is just kind of, all right, now she knows.
Right.
Right. So
like, oh, good.
yeah. Yeah. And
finally,
right. Yeah. But the way I look at our soul's existence, if you will, is, yeah, it is about recognition of energy, and of course, in the human body, it's a limited way of perceiving ourselves as a soul. So that's often where we struggle, right? Because we have only the 5 senses, and now at this time, we're starting to expand to other ways of receiving information, telepathy, for example, and expanding our intuitive abilities. That's going to actually help us to be more in tune with our soul self, if you will, because when we are not involving our ego as much, or the mind that makes up the stories, it can become more of a flow, and we can actually experience our soul self much stronger, because our soul self is like vast, huge, and it's based in love. It's not based in resistance or contraction. It's based in expansion. and learning and growing, right? Those are all the higher energies on that staircase of consciousness. It's all up there, right? So in our soul self.
Right.
So I feel that, being here on earth and in a human body, there are limitations that we have accepted to experience, but it's also this bridge between our soul self, our true self, or whatever we want to call it, higher self, and the experience here on earth that we're now starting to bridge. And our body, our physical vessel is going to evolve as well as we go through next couple of generations. But yeah, I feel that our soul is really becoming more and more visible, if you will, or prominent in our lives here on earth, and that's a beautiful thing.
Is that
I hope that helps.
Yeah. And is that because the frequencies on the planet are rising? I mean, why do you think that our souls are becoming more evolved?
I feel that it's also how we are running energy as a human here on earth, right? Because it's all about resistance or non-resistance, the ones and the zeros, right? Some sort of resistance we have to accept here because in the third dimension.
Right.
But it's also a journey of coming back to our soul self. And I would also say that other locations out in the universe have already gone through that journey. So we are guided from places that have gone up in their vibration and frequency. And I think, you might ask, like, why do we have to go through this? Why can't we just be, up in our soul self? And that's big questions, right? Why do we as a soul choose to experience this and go on this staircase to higher frequency?
Because we want to expand. I mean, that's the soul's journey, right? Just expansion.
Expansion.
Yes. I mean, we wouldn't have come to earth and chosen this body and this family if we didn't want to expand. I mean, this is like the hardest, densest reality, right?
Yes. And the interesting thing too is that the universe itself, we think we're like all alone here on earth, like we're the only ones that needs to go through this expansion journey. But no, actually, the insights that have come through in cosmic insights, downloads, is that the universe actually is also expanding. So there's something here universal that brings everyone to a higher vibration, not just us here on earth. And it has to do with, us accepting that there's always change going on. And I think that's many wise souls have continuously, shared with us that it's all about change. It's all about growth.
Change is good,
anywhere.
right? Yes. When you talked about the frequencies, I was at I think 540 to 600, and you were saying that most, or not, I don't know, humans are like, that aren't like questioning life and questioning who they are usually 200 or below. Will you explain that?
Yes. And first I want to credit David R. Hawkins' work in describing this, staircase of consciousness, because that's really what I'm working with when I look into someone's soul essence and frequency and potential in that way. And yes, there has been, multiple, I would say thousands of assessments done in his work and others around average vibration, if you will, on Earth and in society and anyone who you meet on the street, right? And it's come to some sort of average around 200, which is really the third dimension. The characteristics of the third dimension is to connect with feelings like guilt or victimhood, and so on. But as soon as we start to ask ourselves those questions, like, who am I? We come up to this vibration of self-realization. And that's when people often come to me or to you, because, there's this growth, this curiosity that is ignited within someone.
Right.
And that's when we start the journey to raise our vibration in that sense. So yeah, but on average, I think through David R. Hawkins' work, he concluded that average human is around 200, maybe slightly over that, but
Right.
or below.
Can you go from 200 in this one body to 900? I mean, is that a possibility, or does that take lifetimes to do that?
You know what? That I believe that that's very individual based on our soul contract. And there has been recall of, spontaneous, very quick awakenings, right? When over the span of, days,
Right.
that have had spikes of
like a Kundalini, someone that
yeah.
Right.
So that's an example of that. But I think individually, it's a very personal journey that it can happen over a number of years or over 4 days, right? It's never really a set in stone for how it can happen, right?
Right. But we as a soul, or our soul essence, chooses that journey, or is it free will when we get into this body to like mess up and keep down in the 200s? Is that part of a free will type of thing, or what do you look at it that way?
I believe, based on my experience and others I've read from, right, or been taught by, that it's part of it is soul contract, and part of it is free will. And the reason I say that is that our soul contract is made up that we will have choices in our life, and the choices are really up to us. Like, because I'm linking it back to my own experience, that time when I hit the rock bottom, and it doesn't really matter how it expresses itself in the physical world, but the soul choice here, I had a choice,
Right.
and I chose to expand at that time. But I might as well kind of said, well, I could have chosen, not to.
Right.
So I personally, I think it's a little bit of both, but we have we will always be given the opportunity to grow if it's in our soul contract. Now, I also believe that not all souls are here to grow, or some in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine too, because really there's no good or bad, right? It's not better to have a lifetime where you grow a lot versus a lifetime you're not. It's not about putting the judgment in here. It's more like in your multidimensional self, if you were to look at your entire soul journey quantum wise, you probably would realize why you have the lifetime you have today, because maybe lifetimes in the past you have really worked hard to balance energy, and this lifetime is a vacation lifetime, where you kind of go on a neutral, and there's nothing that's better than the other, right? So, and that's pretty cool. That's the insight that we can gain by not only looking in the charts, but also expand our perception of our own soul's journey.
Right. So in our reading, you had me at like the 8th or 9th dimension, and there's 12 total.
I work personally with the 12.
Yes. Okay.
I know there are other ways of dividing that in, but for me personally, I resonate with the 12.
Right. And the 12th, there's like the ascended masters, right? That's where that resides. Buddha.
Yeah, well, no, because I believe that the 12th dimension is really where nothing is separated.
Okay.
where everything is the same, right? The all, or whatever we want to call it, one.
Right. Where we
Uh,
came from, where when,
Ascended masters are still, in my opinion, individual souls,
Mhm.
very highly advanced individual souls. But yes, if you want to back up all the way to the 12th, in my opinion, that's kind of where we can't separate anything.
Okay. So what I have been like trying to digest is if I was at the eighth or ninth dimension, that's my soul's level. You were explaining, which was so fascinating to me, that for me to come down into this density, the third density, I had to, figure out that was harder for me. There was 2 times that I did that, you said, and it was like through fairies or through a unicorn, like,
Yeah.
what are those called? I forget.
Yeah. So you're and I know you remember this, your first incarnation on Earth ever, which was way back in, let's say, around 400 BC, I think it was, in the
Yes.
Persian era.
Yes, you remembered that?
You you incarnated on Earth for the first time as an elemental,
Okay,
which is
elemental.
more of a life form, not in a human body. It's more of a non-physical body, but it's a kind of a transition stage to then be able to incarnate later on as a in physical body. So that's how I saw, kind of, you used the elemental way of incarnating as a transition to be able to then handle lower densities, because you were still, as an elemental in the 6th dimension,
Right.
but
So
you
when
were able to lower yourself in density, so to say.
Right. Oh,
Yeah,
that was so
yeah.
interesting.
So
And
that was
then,
kind of a transition.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we talked also, we're talking about parallel lives and how you've done readings where, you can tell when someone's either in a certain star system or whatever for a certain amount of time. But with my reading, it was hard to nail down the time because you feel like I'm like spread out.
Yes, yes, and it has happened, and for you as well. Through your soul's journey, you have used fractals of your soul to incarnate or visit, or let's say in multiple places at the same time. And sometimes it's hard to explain because we want to, as humans, put it on a lifetime, right? Or a
Right.
timeline, when it's first come this and then after that this. But in the quantum field, we actually can be in multiple places at the same time, and we can also use fractals, parts of our soul, to have experiences. And even here as a human soul, we can also, I've had readings for people who have a parallel life. Yes, and it's very distinct. They are part of their higher self, or true self is actually having an experience elsewhere, in parallel, but is also guided by this future life. And often it's because it's in the future. And why I say that is that, linking back to what I said earlier about other places out in the universe are further advanced than what we are here on Earth. So it's, bringing in energy, guidance, codes from the future, basically here, for the benefit of our ascension here. So
Right.
does that make sense? Oh, I mean, we're trying to make it sense by here, right? But it's pretty fascinating that this quantum field or multidimensional self is truly vast. Yeah.
The thing that I've really come a long way on learning time, and it's all happening at once. And you really you had that lesson, it went deeper with me. I really appreciate the knowledge now that I can feel. But when you talk about future, like the future lives that are going on right now, those are the messages that, let's say my soul is connecting to or gets a download of something where I'm getting it from my future life. Or what am I getting it from? From a
Yes. For example, so It's hard to say that it's in the future, right? Because as again, in the quantum field, there is no past, present, or future. It's all
Right.
like in the same. But for conversation here, it's more, I would say, relevant to say it that it's from a future life, because you're downloading codes from a higher elevation, if you will, or higher frequency that part of your soul is in resonance with energetically. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And explain that a little bit. So I am in alignment with the energy from the future, and that's the only way I can tap into that.
Yeah, well, you actually, your higher self, your quantum self is always with you, right?
Right.
But it's the difficulty we have here is to actually interpret or sense these. We only have the senses we have,
Right.
but we're expanding, right? So the more we expand as a human being in abilities to receive information in multiple ways, you will be more and more aligned with your higher self from the future, if you will.
Okay.
So it's an energetic match, right? And the more we evolve, the more we do work on ourselves, let's say, and the greater is the likelihood of aligning with those future energies, if you will. And I believe also that for those of us, you included, you have a mission here on Earth, and it's very much what you receive is linked to that. So that you can be aligned as much as possible to your divine potential, so that your mission can be fulfilled in this lifetime. So there's no coincidence that you and I had that reading a few days ago, because you were meant to be activated in this way.
Right.
And ultimately your North Node, which is the direction of your expansion, if you will,
Okay.
is clearly linked to your higher self residing in a higher elevation, or in the future, if you will.
Right. Oh, gee. What has ever been have you ever had a reading where you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this?
Yes, and yours was one of those, because yes, and often it is also when I realize that this soul has yours included, vast access to universal wisdom. And I've talked about many times about, galactic, what we call galactic points, galactic center, which is the universal wisdom black hole that drives this galaxy. But there's also, with evolution, we are going to know more and more of what's behind those black holes. And there are, at least 3 more that are driving multiple galaxies, and at the very furthest it's like hundreds and thousands of galaxies, and each soul have a blueprint, a unique blueprint, either accessing parts of these black holes, because universal wisdom is what we're attuned to as a quantum soul, right? And some are just linked up to bigger insights, if you will. And yours are one of those. So that's pretty cool. And every time I see all of these galactic points spread all over the chart, I just like, wow. And it's often linked to, having a collective mission, a collective, here to be able to support the energy shift that we are in right now.
Right. That was, another calming thing for what you said that made my mind kind of at a neat feeling, was that I've always been in my lives at a place kind of like we are now, like in this shift in the 2020 and where we're going, this whole ascending new earth, whatever you want to call it. We've called it a million things. And, it was like, I know that everyone that is in a body right now, this is a pretty big time in history. There's no history because it's all happening at one time, right? Oh my gosh. But yeah, it was like, I know. And when my having girls and being a mom, and then being a passionate mom and intentional, and teaching them what I've taught them since they were babies. And I see it from such a higher perspective. It's like, gosh, they chose me, but I was like, you're gonna learn all these things, and by the time fruit of my labor is showing up. I'm sure it's yours too, when they get to the teenage years and you see them, with the confidence in they know it's always happening for them. And we talk to our angels, we write in our gratitude journals, and it's all part of their life. And they've cultivated that. We've all cultivated that together. But now when I see where I've been, and why that's kind of like, why I'm the mom I am, right? I mean,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yes, it's all, and it's funny you bring up this, connection we have to our children, and I often feel that the children that are coming in, or even the generation that we're in now, they are to a large extent our teachers, because a lot of them are very, very awake. Right. And very aware, starting at a different level, if you will, and I think that's definitely planned like that, because the younger generation is really going to take it to the next step.
Right. Oh, so yes, I love talking like this. Let's talk about your book. But is there anything else about galactic astrology before we close that door and everyone's knocking on yours to get a reading?
Well, I think if you're watching or listening to this and feel like, oh, I'm really curious about this, it's a divine timing behind what you're curious about. So follow that, whether it's galactic astrology or anything else, right? Follow your curiosity, and don't negotiate it away, because we've been kind of, okay, yeah, that's nothing, for too long, right?
Right.
Listen to the curiosity, what really makes you passionate about something. And it might be whatever it is, right? But follow it.
Right.
I would say, because that's your life force, your quantum self speaking to you.
Right. Oh, I love that. So you wrote a book as well.
Yes, I
Wisdom
did.
Beyond What You Know. I love that.
Ah,
I love the title. And that
yes.
was that did that knock on your door? Like, how did that come about?
Yes, it did knock on my door, and I realized, as many times before, that this was a channeled book. It has a message that many people may need at this time, and the subtitle is "How to Shift from Being Driven by the Mind to Living from the Heart and Intuition." And yeah, it's a channeled book in the sense that it just came through me
Right.
a very limited time, and I just had to follow that call, or that flow I experienced in writing it. So it reveals 7 inner shifts to step into a multidimensional way of living from the heart. And there's some stories from my life, but also coaching exercises, because I really felt that many books have ideas, right? They have some great idea and vision of how a heart-centered living can be, but I have a lot of earth in my chart, so I want like practical.
Right.
Have to be able to sit down and actually get a result, and after doing some exercises as well, and being a coach, I felt very much heart-centered, that I wanted to put in some not just vision and ideas, but actually hands-on exercises.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I was reading part of it, and I like books where it's like a workbook, because it makes me really,
Yes.
I think I just absorb it better, as I understand it more. It makes me put my input in, then I see it working.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and it speaks to people who actually want to make a difference in their own life, because it's part of it is also we have this tendency to learn and learn and learn and learn, but then at some point we have to step into actually using that wisdom.
Right.
So that's what I want to encourage, to actually, make that change in your own life.
What's calling you? Like, where do you see yourself? And I know that you told me I'm going to be speaking on a certain date in January of 2026. I mean, that was cool. And I
With a
can't
grain of
wait.
salt, but
Right.
yes, there's definitely something big going on around that time for you.
Right. I love that.
And
What,
maybe
tell me,
earlier than that too, who knows, but
right. But it's, even knowing that, it's kind of fun to, think about that. And it kind of, I think when you hear things like something where it's that specific, it opens your eyes to experience, to look for that your reticular activating system, starts to work. Like, I wonder what that means.
wonder
Is
what
that
that
what
is. Yeah.
you're my
Me
reading
too.
that?
I'm gonna, put that on the calendar, that period of time, and what
But
came through
what's
for you
coming
there.
up for you? What
Yeah.
do you see in the next few years for you? Your girls will graduate, and then what?
Yes. And for them, of course, I wish that they, land where they're, and I already know that they will land where they need to be. And I
Right.
trust that. And for me, I have set the intention to expand my leadership in this space. And I know that I'm um, here to be the bridge. And we have many of us, including you as well, being the bridge between trusting our expansion when it comes to intuition and how we actually receive information, how we become more aligned to our divine potential. And that is my mission, to help translate that for others. So I feel very much on purpose. I just feel that it needs to become more mainstream, right? It
Right.
needs
Oh,
to
me too.
reach more people, and it will naturally, as people are getting more and more curious about things like this, and naturally.
Right.
So my
Yeah, you can't
intention is,
force it.
you can't force it, and that's,
Right.
it doesn't have to be either. But I see myself as my intention is to become a thought leader, or be in a, a force.
Right.
I call myself fiercely calm.
Oh, cute.
That's kind of how I see myself. And I love doing this work, so I would not be surprised to be able to be part of spreading it further, more widely, and simplify it for people, because this can be pretty complicated and complex sometimes.
Hmm.
And I have a passion for bringing it into our daily lives, and so that's what the intention I've set for myself.
I love that. And have you done your girls all heard their readings?
I have not done galactic
Oh,
readings for them. No,
oh,
I
funny.
I have been so busy, so I haven't, like, family is gonna come
But
later when I
I was
get a
thinking
break.
about that today when I was thinking about you. Like, would if you did my girls' readings,
Yeah.
would it look like we had been together? Like, how does that work? Have you ever had that experience?
Yes, many times I also get questions about either twin flame relationships, soul contracts. It's very popular, but also family constellations, if you will. I know that's a system, but I don't work with family constellation system. But through astrology, we can also overlay charts on top of each other, and see why we have been brought together.
Right.
So there are ways to look at families that way as well. Yes.
So there is a chance that if I had the girls done that we would overlay. Is it
Oh,
absolutely
absolutely.
100%
Yes.
going to because we're
Yes.
together now? They're my kids. Like we're
Yes.
soul connected.
And what's fascinating with a galactic reading, a soul reading, is that you can also get insights, what roles they have had in
Oh,
prior incarnate, because it's often that we incarnate with our immediate family or soul family, if you will. There might be other souls in the soul group, but that we've had different roles in different
right,
lives.
right.
And you know that from past life readings, that Sometimes somebody comes in as a daughter, has been your mom and
Right.
in your previous life, etc. And sometimes I think it's great to know all of this information, but for me, what I'm passionate about in working with people is actually, what do we do with that information? Can it
Right.
bring our perspective to be more accepting, more loving, more integrated in compassion in our
Yes.
lives here and now? That's what we
Yes.
use this information for.
I mean, everything that you just said is how I've been feeling since then. No, I'm not. I
Right.
mean, and I do normally
I
say, oh,
love
I'm loving, I'm compassionate, I'm grateful. I, live with that, joyful heart. I know my mission. I know, it's like, but what you said just now is exactly what I could multiply it in the last few days from that reading. And that's exactly what it did.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. I
Oh,
want to
I
give you a
loved,
hug through
I know, right?
through the
Oh, I
screen
loved
here.
it. I just, well, we're ending now, but we can, when I think about um, meeting you first and having our first connection, not having that, not knowing why I wasn't connecting, knowing now that it was like a higher power pulling us for me to have this experience and for us to have this beautiful conversation where I know you and you know me, like this, the energy. And if it would have been funny to have recorded the one we did that one day, because there was just, you know what I mean? Like it just
Yeah.
takes that. I just wanted that feeling, and it's more than I thought it would be, so amazing.
Yes, I'm so happy you followed your inner knowing there. That need to have that deeper experience
Right.
first. So
Right.
love
It's
that.
important to me. And it's important for me when I am sharing someone like you to my world, for them to understand that I've gone through it and what I've pulled, what it's done for me. So instead of just listening to this generic version of what you do, it's like I have my blood in it. It's like I'm all in.
Yes.
I got to be all in.
Yeah, I love that you're really putting your soul into this work, and this is how how you share, right? It's genuine, it's authentic, and it's with experience. And I love that you chose kind of the longer way to do it, and the deeper way of
Right.
getting to know your guests. So
Yeah, I love that.
beautiful.
I love it. And we can find you. How can people find you?
Yes, come visit me on my website, ulrikasullivan.com. There's everything you need to know there. And also, my book is there, my calendar is there. Yeah, coaching, readings. Anyone who feels curious, come visit me on ulrikasullivan.com.
And you're on Instagram?
I
Please?
am on Instagram, also my name, Ulrika
Okay.
Sullivan, and yeah, Facebook page and all of them. All the tags or handles are on my website too. So
Okay, good. All
yeah.
right. Well, thank you. I've loved it. I've loved my last few days with you, and um, that my reading will definitely last for until we do another
Yeah.
something. I don't know, the next thing we do.
Yeah, likewise, Ashley. You are a magnificent, wise, ancient, advanced soul that is here to do big, big contribution. And I'm so honored to have been
Oh,
doing this reading for you because, yeah, you're awesome.
oh, thank you so
Keep
much.
doing what you do.
Thank you. It's feelings mutual. So thank you so much.